Okay, so first off, this video is not going over the idea of the Blackhawks actually wanting to do it, because according to Pierre LeBrun on TSN earlier yesterday, the Blackhawks do not intend to trading these guys. It's just, with the whole status quo, with the whole frustration we've discussed in the past, and with the overall situation that the Chicago Blackhawks are going through right now, I think it's very fair to ask, for the three main franchise cornerstone pieces on this team that still remain, is it time to trade them out? Again, the question is not would the Blackhawks want to do it, because it was highlighted that they don't want to, but would that be the better decision? Let's go over what's happened in Blackhawk land over the past few hours here. Yesterday, I didn't cover this in the channel, but yesterday the Chicago Blackhawks released a statement. And I'm kind of laughing right now because it's kind of it really does kind of send a message to Blackhawks fans. Pretty much, they're saying, hey, Saad, Crawford, these guys, they're gone. We know you like these guys, but they're gone. We understand it was tough to see them go, but we have a different direction we want to go. And that's what we're here to tell you guys about in this statement. We've got young players. We want to develop these young players. We want these young players to be the ones who help us go to the promised land once again into the future. And in order to allow them to develop to the point where they're able to do that, we have to experience some growing pains. Then they throw a whole bunch of stats like, yo, the Blackhawks were the youngest team in the 2020 playoffs, and I think that's a total cop-out. You guys were the second worst team in the entire NHL to be included in the NHL's return-to-play format. Only Montreal was worse, and you guys would have been drafting 10th overall in the draft under normal circumstances. You guys were 9th last in the league. So even though you guys did make the playoffs and you were the youngest team in the playoffs, and you guys did experience that, I guess, that's kind of a cop-out point, man. It's a very specific one that kind of makes me laugh every time I read it. It says, as our young players develop and learn how to win consistently, they'll make some mistakes. Inevitably, we'll miss the mark sometimes too, but we'll communicate openly with you on this journey together. Yeah. So, this was huge. People started memeing this left and right, saying, okay, pretty much what the Blackhawks are trying to do here is just convince everybody that they still got it in them and that the best is yet to come, which is kind of weird because, hey, you guys won 3 cups in a decade. Like, come on, bro. And we noted earlier in the week about how Jonathan Toews mentioned in The Athletic in an article that he was really upset. Like, him, the other veterans on the team, which a lot of people were defining as Kane, Seabrook, and Duncan Keith, these guys were not happy to see the moves that the Chicago Blackhawks were making. Trading away Brandon Saad for Zadorov, letting Corey Crawford walk, these big important pieces that helped out the Blackhawks winning those Stanley Cups in the past, they're gone. And the whole rebuild, which is what the Blackhawks moves indicated they were doing at that time, completely caught Jonathan Toews off guard. He was like, yeah, I didn't know we were going through a rebuild. Nobody told me this. Are you kidding me? We thought we can still win. We still think we can win. We want to win a cup again. And like, yeah, you could debate whether or not those comments are a little bit ambitious or not, but at the end of the day, Jonathan Toews, these guys, Kane, they were pissed, according to some of the sources. So now, with this statement out in the air from the Chicago Blackhawks' own social media, and from a few quotes over here on Stan Bowman, let's go over to the Chicago Tribune with an article written by Paul Sullivan. Take a look at the title, with the Chicago Blackhawks officially rebuilding. Toews, Kane, and Keith deserve a chance to play for a winner elsewhere. That is something that we will get to later on in this video. But some of the quotes over here from Stan Bowman, take a look at this. As much as it might be hard for our core players, Toews, Kane, Keith, and Seabrook to understand, I think as we discussed it more and more and explained it, I think they understand what we're trying to accomplish. According to an interview here on NBC Sports Chicago, Bowman said that he spoke to Kane, Keith, Toews, and Seabrook, and he said, I want to build more depth to make it easier for you guys. And when it comes to misunderstandings, I think anybody in reality can actually relate to this. One simple misunderstanding, no matter how big or small, could be the difference between you seeing somebody in one way and seeing somebody in a completely opposite direction. It can be the big difference between love and hate, and the same thing kind of applies here. Jonathan Toews was in a spot a few weeks ago where he did not know the team was going through a rebuild, and he was caught off guard by the moves. So now that things have been explained, where Bowman sat down with the four of them and he told them what exactly it is he wants to do, who knows if now is the time where Toews and Kane and Keith are going to be like, yeah, okay, let's go through it. Let's go through a rebuild. But again, taking a look at what Jonathan Toews wants to do, taking a look at his own ambitions that he mentioned earlier in that piece that was published on The Athletic by Mark Lazarus, the guy wants to win a cup every year. Like, this is not the kind of guy who is going to want to be able to go through a rebuild. So that's why the question has been asked several times, not only here on the Chicago Tribune, but also on places like TSN. Is it time to trade Toews, Kane, and Keith? Seabrook, he's not in the question. This guy's got an immovable contract. This guy hasn't been great. He hasn't been all that. Okay, so we're going to leave him out of this conversation right now. But for Duncan Keith, who is healthy, he is making $5.538 million till 2023. For Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, who are making $10.5 each until 2023. And for all these guys who have no move clauses, would the proper move to be to ultimately catalyze that rebuild by trading away one of these guys, getting some picks back, getting some prospects back, and saying full out 110%, we are committing to a rebuild. Not a retool on the fly, a rebuild. The difference between this and what the New York Rangers did, as was highlighted by Ray Ferraro earlier yesterday on TSN Overdrive, was that the New York Rangers were not bogged down by big contracts when they sent out their statement to the fans saying that they wanted to rebuild. They weren't in a position where they had Toews, Kane, Keith, and Seabrook making, what, $46 million against the cap? My goodness, that's incredible. But the Rangers were in a spot where they kind of got lucky. They signed the best free agent on the market in Artemi Panarin. They traded for Jacob Trouba, who is one of the better defensemen on the market available at that time. They won 2 draft lotteries in 2nd overall 2019 and 1st overall in 2020. And now they're in a position where they look like they could be an absolute powerhouse. It's unlikely that Chicago will have that luxury to the same extent and as quickly. They can't go after the big free agent because they have $46 million tied up in those guys that we talked about. They can't rely on the draft lottery to give themselves wins over and over and over again. They already got 3rd overall in 2019, and Kirby Dach, yes, he has been great, but the Rangers got Capo Caco and Lafreniere. The Blackhawks might not be in a position to do that. And while the New York Rangers were out here trading for Jacob Trouba, the Chicago Blackhawks are out here instead trading for Nikita Zadorov, so I think you can kind of see the differences there. The point is, if the Chicago Blackhawks want to go full-on rebuild in the same way that the New York Rangers did, and if fans are expecting the same kind of rebuild at the same pace as what New York did, sorry guys, you're going to be disappointed. Unless you go out there, you make some big moves, you let go of some big names, you free up a lot of money, you get a lot of assets, and you make your team worse in the short term, up that draft pick, get yourselves an Atu Ratu, a Brant Clark, or a Dylan Guenther, or a Luke Hughes, or whatever in the 2021 NHL entry draft, and then maybe a Shane Wright in 2022. Then you guys are going to be in a position to do great, just far down the line. It's just kind of weird because if you're in a position like Stan Bowman was in, where the Blackhawks were in recently in their statement saying that they want to remain competitive, but they're going to have to build a youthful environment around Toews, Kane, Seabrook, and Brent Seabrook, who is still on injury reserve, but hey, we'll just include him in there for the sake of including him in there. That's tough. That's really, really tough. So, for the Chicago Blackhawks and their guys whom they've already spoken to and they've already laid down the plans as to what exactly it is they are aiming to achieve, who knows if they'll even think about it. I know if I'm Jonathan Toews and I expressed that extremely passionate statement that was published in The Athletic earlier in this week, I don't know if I'm going to be okay with sitting through a few years of just letting the youth develop around you. I get that hockey players aren't necessarily the most ambitious when it comes to requesting trades, especially if they're superstars like Keith, Kane, and Toews are, especially compared to other sports like basketball or whatever. But still, you gotta think about it, right? Do the Blackhawks build a future around Toews and Kane, who are in their early 30s, Duncan Keith, who is 37, and Brent Seabrook, who's 35? Do they hold them to this standard where they're playing for a team that isn't really all too great, that is getting rid of their big quality pieces, and that is rebuilding in their own words? Or do they go all the way? Hey man, Toews is on the block. You want him? Give us your top U23 player and 2 first-round picks. I don't know, that's just a thought. Talk to me in the comments what you think about this whole idea. Do you think the Blackhawks should trade Kane, Toews, or Keith? I don't know if they would, but the question is, should they? Hope you enjoyed this visual 99, and bye.